We're recording, so be good. Hey, viewers, I'm Jana with Purl Together, and I'm here with two awesome knitter people, Anne Frost from the I Thought I Knew How podcast, and Shana Hofstetter, knitter extraordinaire and Hanukkah specialist.
Wow.
Pretty awesome. The pressure's on now,
definitely
right?
Lantern.
I definitely specialize in Hanukkah around here.
Yes. So we're kicking off our kind of winter holiday season with I want to just acknowledge all the different holiday traditions and religions, because I'm pretty not religious. And so not only do we celebrate, Christmas and Advent and all that stuff, but like last year we had a feature on Hanukkah, and then we also had one on Kwanzaa. Anne and I were talking about some different holidays because you were a religious studies major, right?
Yeah. Back in the day. Yeah.
Right. So there's a lot, and there's a bunch of things that have already happened that I wasn't able to get it together for podcasting about. But Hanukkah, I think it's a big one. I mean, it's prevalent, Yeah, but it's early.
We're loud and proud.
It's early this year, so we can't really include it in our December thing because it's not yet quite December. So you get to be a standalone episode.
You're so lucky.
Hanukkah extraordinaire. We'll see if I'm up to the task, everybody. I hope
so here's my first question. Why is Hanukkah spelled different ways?
Yeah. So the good news is that you can spell it different ways and you're not wrong.
Oh.
Basically, the reason is because the letter that Hanukkah starts with in Hebrew doesn't have a direct translation to the English alphabet.
Oh.
So it can be translated as a CH, as like a H sound, or as an H, as a H sound. But basically, that's why you see it with CH, you see it with just H, you see it with one K, with two Ks, with an H at the end, with just an A at the end. But all of those are fine. They're all kosher. You can use any of them. So this is not a spelling quiz. You're going to get it right. Everybody's going to know what you're talking about. But basically, the problem is that, some alphabets have different sounds and they don't translate directly. And we do the best we can.
And when you went, it sounded the same both times to me.
So one is further back. It kind of sounds like phlegmy. And one is further forward in your mouth.
Less phlegmy.
Less phlegmy, yes.
Okay.
I'm having flashbacks to my biblical Hebrew class now from college.
Exactly. Yes. So many years of Hebrew right here.
Yeah.
And I don't know anything about Hebrew, but I was thinking about my German grandfather and how he would be like, it's
a very similar area of your throat that you're making that noise from. A little bit like cats when they're trying to get up that fur ball.
Yeah.
Like back there. That's kind of what you're working with.
Kind of the gacking sound.
Yeah. Yeah.
So in Hebrew class, they taught you how to gack.
I mean, most of the time you paid no attention and tried to, just get along with your American accent. But there is a letter that's a ha, and there's a letter that's a ha. And so it is important to be able to differentiate.
You can hear that little vibration back there. Yeah, that's
exactly.
True.
You don't want to say the wrong word.
Oh. Right. Okay. So there's no wrong spelling. Fantastic.
No, go for it.
So this year, Hanukkah starts on, is it the 28th or the 29th? Or is it like midnight between?
So it starts on the 28th. So all Jewish holidays start the evening before what we would say is the first day. Okay. So it's at sundown. And then so it's sundown is the first, and then, sundown to the next day, that's the first day. So it's not sunrise to sunrise, it's sundown to sundown.
Oh.
For all Jewish holidays.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's just whenever sundown is wherever you are.
That's right. So it can be different for people who are at different latitudes. It's, it's obviously different for people in the Southern Hemisphere, but it's even different from people who live in, Miami versus people who live in Seattle. So
sure.
A lot of people will have, calendars that will show you kind of in your area, like what time it is for you. And so, yeah, there can be different lengths of days and when you're doing things.
So Hanukkah is 8 days.
Uh-huh.
And I think a lot of people know that, but they don't understand why necessarily. And
Sure.
that gets into the story of Hanukkah. Can you tell us like an overview of the story
Sure.
of Hanukkah?
Sure. So perhaps people know that there used to be temples in Jerusalem where there were, back in sort of the biblical times. And so this is around the time of the second temple. And so the temple was desecrated and there was a rededication. And this rededication involved lighting different candelabras in the temple. And so there are lights that are supposed to be, flames that are the eternal flame that are supposed to be on all the time, forever. And what they found was they only had enough oil to light the flame to rededicate the temple that would last for 1 day. But in those days, in order to get more oil, it was about an 8-day round trip. So they lit the flame and then sort of sent off a courier and we're like, well, it'll last as long as it lasts. And the miracle is that the tiny bit of oil that was only supposed to last for 1 day actually lasted for 8 days. And so that is what we're celebrating over the 8 days. So there's sort of a couple of interesting things to that. First, it would, so people traditionally light a menorah or a Hanukkah and they put it in their window and you add a candle every day. So hang on, I have show and tell. So you have one here, this is the shamash, it's the helper. And then you add each day another candle, right? So 1 day you just have 2, and then the second day you have 3, 2 days and the helper and so on. So there are rabbis who actually think it should be the other way, that you should start with all 9 candles, all 8 days lit with the helper, and then take one away each day because that would make sense in terms of using up the oil that was the miracle of the 8 days. But ultimately, actually, other rabbis, it's always a debate in Judaism. So, there's that. The joke is 2 Jews, 3 opinions.
There's always a joke, isn't there?
There's always a joke.
I mean, that's like part of being Jewish is the jokes, right?
Well, the food is good too, but yeah, the jokes are good.
Oh, we'll get to the food part.
We'll get to the food.
But that really is an active part of Judaism, is the study and the debate over what different things mean and trying to wrestle that out.
Yes. And so the rabbis that won out were the ones who thought that you should be adding a candle each night. And the idea is basically to add light to the world. Mm-hmm. And that you want to, increase the light and the good deeds and you're increasing, the goodness of lighting the menorah. Mm-hmm. So it's interesting to know that there was this debate and kind of who won out ultimately. So that's why we add candles, but it wasn't always a settled thing. I don't know anybody who takes candles away, but I would be really interested to know if anybody out there is doing that.
Oh yeah. So leave a comment down below if you're one of the takeaway candle people.
Yeah.
I have a question about the candle thing. So the helper one, is that the one that lights the others? Then you just mean that's the one you would lift off and use to light everything else. So you're not like striking a match each time.
Yeah. So you have one helper, you light that one, and then you say the prayers, and then you light however many are left. This is a very sort of traditional menorah that I got for my wedding, but they can look like, I thought I'd bring my son's menorah, which,
oh, that's cool.
So, they can look like different shapes and all of that. It doesn't have to be super traditional, but the idea is, 8 days plus one helper. It ends up being a total of 44 candles, and you don't blow the candles out. So it's not like a birthday cake. So once they're lit, you're supposed to put it in the window to sort of shine the light out of your window and into the world. And then you just let them go. And there's a lot of like scraping the wax out of the menorah the next morning to get it ready again. But you go through, they're little candles, so they don't burn for that long. But you also, please, everyone on the internet, don't leave candles unattended in your home. Thank you.
Yeah, fire safety here. Safety first. Safety first.
Yeah. So we always put it down on like a ceramic plate or something like that. So if the wax strips off or if a candle falls over or something, it's not going to catch the table on fire. Right. We don't leave them unattended, just stick around for the hour that it takes, that kind of thing. So
right. Good point.
Yeah.
So that goes on for 8 days.
Yes.
But there's all kinds of other things that you do during this 8-day.
There are. So that's the most sort of religious part and the most, well-known, I think, part. Now, I will say that traditionally, Hanukkah was not a gift-giving holiday, but because of its, proximity to Christmas and because, generally because of Western society, capitalism, consumption, you name it, it's become a gift-giving holiday. So the most traditional gift is something called Gelt, which I don't have real Gelt with me, but they are the gold foiled chocolate pieces. Gelt means money. Right. And so these are, little toy Gelt. And so kids would get Gelt, and you would use that in a gambling game. Yes, we are encouraging our children to gamble, which is played with a dreidel. And I have a bunch of dreidels for show and tell as well.
And that's the spinning.
This is a spinning top. So each side of the top, I want to make sure I'm going in the right direction. Here, 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 and here, it spells out a sentence. So it says, let me start it from here. So it says, Nes Gadol Haya Sham, which means a great miracle happened there, which is in Jerusalem. In Israel, they have dreidels, and instead of saying Sham, which means there, they say Po, which means here. So this letter is actually different on dreidels in Israel.
Sure, that makes sense. Yeah.
And so each of the letters, you spin the dreidel, and you win, you lose, you take half, you leave half, whole thing. You do it with Gelt. When I was a kid, you did it with peanuts. I don't think people do it with peanuts anymore because of peanut allergies. But it's just like a fun, but you put in the ante, and then you go around the circle and you see who wins. So it's not gambling like poker, right? But it is a game of chance.
And a lot of candy eating. There's a lot of chocolate consumption, I'm thinking.
There is a ton of whatever you're using, right? So if you're using like raisins, then suddenly half of the raisins have disappeared because you're putting those in your mouth, or certainly, the Gelt or like Jordan almonds or whatever it is you've got to play with. Right. I don't actually know anybody who plays with money because it's not that, it's just a kid game.
Right.
But you definitely, at the end of the day, you're just stuffing your face with chocolate. So it's great. And there are lots of different, so the one that I showed is like a very traditional shape, and this one is wood. I think this one is literally like the first one that I remember ever having as a kid. It's also just wood, but there are lots of, different weird shaped ones like this, which you play like this.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then depending on, where it kind of.
How it falls.
And then there's this one, which is also sort of a weird shape. If you can see that.
Right.
And so again, it's fun. There are more and less traditional shapes, just like with the menorahs, but it's just, it's just fun. And then you just have them everywhere. I mean, I have like a, Tupperware full.
Wow.
That I've had these since childhood, and then you just dump more in, and it just keeps getting, you just keep getting more and more. We have ones that look like a football and a baseball and a soccer ball and stuff like that. You know, it can be all different designs, all different things, just as long as you have the 4 letters,
right,
you can play.
Right. Nice. So when would those games traditionally be played, like at the beginning of Hanukkah or just whenever?
Whenever.
Okay.
You know, a lot of communities will have, before COVID, BC, before COVID, you know, you might have like a Hanukkah party at your synagogue or at the Jewish community center. You may have, you know, so you would have Hanukkah parties with different people in your family. When I was a kid, we would have different candles with different people. So we'd go to my aunt's house for a big Hanukkah party. We'd have, you know, we'd light candles with friends and things like that. And so that was a good way to make sure that you got everybody's gifts too, because you were kind of traveling around to everybody. And, you know, you'd have dinner, you'd eat traditional foods, which we'll get to, and play dreidel, hang out, sing bad Hanukkah songs. And it was great. So any time basically over your 8 crazy nights.
Cool. So is there drinking in Hanukkah like there is at I mean, like a lot of Christmas parties, there's always like wine and things, and you know, the eggnog and the traditional Christmas drinks, and like
there isn't really a traditional Hanukkah drink. I mean, for most Jewish holidays, there's wine and there's a blessing over the wine, but that's not really a part of like the Hanukkah tradition with the menorah. Right. So it's sort of like, if you feel like having a drink with dinner, enjoy.
Sure.
But
there are traditional foods. You touched on that.
There are traditional foods. So there are 2, and I even brought, this is the beauty of having small children. This is a toy plastic latke, which is a potato pancake. Normally, so you can be like a super striver and grate your potatoes and, you know, pack it all together, or you can do what I do. Which is buy the pack. I'm not shilling for Manischewitz. Any of these are fine. Manischewitz happened to be on sale and is the one that I have in my home at the moment. So potato pancakes, now they have them in, you know, they have sweet potato pancakes, they have zucchini pancakes, they have veggie pancakes, they have home style, they have all kinds of different things. But basically the idea is to eat things that are soaked in oil because we're celebrating the miracle of the oil. So potato pancakes, latkes are the #1 traditional food. Now there is, of course, the ever important debate of sour cream or applesauce with your latke.
I don't know why it can't be both.
Exactly. That is the correct answer.
Yeah.
The correct answer is both.
Yeah.
Yes, without question. You know, do you feel a little more savory? Do you feel a little more sweet? It's a little bit like brunch. I want it all, right? I want the omelet and I want the French toast. Like, let's do this. So,
is there a reason that it's potato pancake as opposed to pancake?
No, just because you would, you know, you're frying it, you're like deep frying it. The other traditional food, which is more of a traditional food in Israel, is something called a Sufganiyot or Sufganiyot for more than one. These are donuts. So fried dough, and they are jelly filled, and then dusted with some powdered sugar. They are so delicious. I read that last year over 17 million of these donuts were consumed in Israel over Hanukkah, which I just have to shout out my Israeli brothers and sisters. Great job, guys.
Good job.
Great job.
That is impressive.
So do you make things? Do you make the donut?
Yeah, we totally do. Well, my husband makes things.
Okay.
I'm okay at cooking. I'm not a great baker, and donuts are a little bit out of my comfort zone. But yes, I can definitely make a mean latke. with or without the, help of Mrs. Manischewitz.
Yeah.
And this is not one that I made. This is just plastic.
That's from last year, leftover.
Exactly. This is the hockey puck that, our kids are going to play with when it's cold enough here.
But when it comes to the Sufganiyot,
yeah,
you watch and knit.
Yes, exactly. I'm very supportive, and I'm an excellent eater for all of these things. Now, I will say that, of course, Christmas has edged into and affected Hanukkah. So we have these holiday cookie cutters, which are in, Jewish star, menorah, dreidel, and this is sort of the symbol for life. It's how you would spell life in Hebrew, Chai. Cookies have nothing to do with Hanukkah at all, but here they are. So there's plenty of, stuff out there that you can do. But I will say that, my kids, to go with the latke, they have a little like latke making, set.
Skillet. It's a skillet.
Yeah, a little skillet and spatula and, all kinds of things. We also have, because, Anne, I appreciate your bunting behind you. I too have some happy Hanukkah bunting that can go up.
Very nice.
There we go. Now this one's an H, not a CH.
Okay.
But it would be fine with a CH as well. So there's all kinds of, stuff. I will also just note 2Ks. I will also note that, businesses get it wrong all of the time, and you just try to be gracious about it. It's annoying and it can be frustrating because it just feels like everything is so Christmas and it's so overwhelmingly Christmas. And so there are times where you're like, no, putting Santa in like a blue costume doesn't make it Hanukkah, like Santa. Or things that, people...
I've never seen that.
Oh, yeah.
But I don't know if you were near a big city or so.
They'll put, like a, Hanukkah bush or ornaments that are, a Star of David, like for the top of your tree. And it's like, if you have a tree, that's fine, but it's not because you're celebrating Hanukkah, right? It's either because you're celebrating Christmas, or it's your secular tradition, or for people who are from Russia, they have a New Year's tree. I mean, there are lots of different traditions. But, there are moments where you're like, no, actually, that has nothing to do with Judaism. That's just kind of turning Christianity like a different shade of blue. But
so I have a question about the blue. So is like, why on earth would someone put Santa in a blue suit? Is it because of the Israeli flag is blue and white? Is that where
I think it's because the Israeli flag is blue and white, and blue and white are traditional colors. So for prayer shawls,
right? I've seen the stole.
It's usually white, and then it has to have blue fringes on the corners. And so blue and white is sort of a traditional Jewish combo, let's say. Obviously, it was adopted by the state of Israel when Israel was created, and now I think it's just, it's spread as those are the Jewish colors. So
yeah. In my ignorance, I wasn't aware of that. So
yeah, it's the answer. I think it's the Jewish answer to red and green, but
okay.
But people get it wrong all the time, right? And so you're like, or they do things where it's like, happy Hanukkah, like enjoy your unleavened bread. And you're like, that's a different holiday. That was close, but no.
Thanks for trying.
Yeah, exactly. So, when people try, I really appreciate it. When companies try and get it wrong, I appreciate it less, because that means that they haven't done a good job of having anyone Jewish anywhere in the company to say, stop.
Or even just researching it, or even just, I mean, I'm sure all this information is out there.
Yes, it's definitely out there. So, but for all of the viewers who are like, oh, I don't know, do I say happy Hanukkah? Like, how do I say anything? First of all, definitely wish people happy Hanukkah. And second of all, don't be worried about it. People will be really gracious and thankful that you said anything at all.
And that you made an effort. Yeah.
Yeah, that you made an effort. I know that there's a lot of, debate about saying, you know, Merry Christmas versus Happy Holidays. And I will weigh in and say that I am a strong Happy Holidays person.
Right.
Because I don't celebrate Christmas and it is nice to feel included. So for what it is worth. Now I will say that after Hanukkah is over, with which this year is December 6th, it's super early. You know, it's a little weird to be like, okay, now we have 3 weeks until Christmas.
And then people are still saying to you, Happy Hanukkah, because people don't know.
Then I go straight to Happy New Year at that point. I'm like, and a Happy New Year, you know, keep moving, right? We just keep moving. So it's really early this year. So Judaism is on a lunar calendar. And so the days, you know, the days change. Hanukkah is almost always between Thanksgiving and Christmas, but like last year it was, you know, Christmas was right in the middle of Hanukkah. And so it's pretty easy. This year it's much earlier because of the way that the dates have moved. This is remarkably early. But as my mother would say, shout out to my mom, it's the same every year, right? Because it's always the same in the Hebrew calendar. So it's not early or late, it's the same every year. Shout out to my mom.
Excellent.
Yeah, I know every evening as you light the candles, there's, are they prayers or is it just the call and response? Do you consider them prayers?
So they are blessings over the candles. So the first day you do 3 different blessings because you do the 2 traditional blessings. And then you do a blessing that says, you know, thank you for, like, thank God that I made it to this time, which is actually something that you can say for anything. Okay, so the Hebrew is, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehechianu v'kiyamanu v'higianu lazman hazeh. And what that means is, blessed are you, Lord our God, King of the universe, who has kept us alive, sustained us, and brought us to this time. And I think that that is, you know, especially during COVID and everything that's gone on over the last year and a half, that feeling of just being grateful for having made it to this moment is, you know, something that I am really trying to hang on to in this season. So that's one of the prayers that you do during the first day only, because now you've made it to the festival. And then the other 2 are really blessings over lighting the candles. And so it's, you know, it's like less about like what you're happy about and more just like, hey, I have this commandment to light the candles, so I'm doing it. You know, that's sort of the feeling. And it's pretty quick. Most families will sing it together. My family sings it together. We're not the most musical, but we get through it.
But your kids are learning it, and that's important.
Exactly. And then, you know, after you light the candles, which we usually do, you know, sometime around dinner, then a lot of people, certainly in the United States and also like in the Western world more generally, gifts, right, comes to the presents. So I will say that it's not as big as like Christmas gifts. Obviously it depends on the family, but there are definitely times where it's like, here's a book, or here are socks, or, you know, here's a new coloring book and a new set of crayons. It doesn't tend to be sort of these huge gifts. Some families will do a very big gift on the first day or the last day, or both the first day and the last day. But it doesn't tend to be like 8 amazing, huge gifts. Which is, of course, what I would have preferred as a child and what my kids would prefer now. But, you know, some of those middle days, you're like, here's a tiny stuffed animal, or like, here's a new magazine or a new book or something like that. Like we keep it, because you just can't keep up that level for 8 whole days, right? I mean, it's just too much. So, but gifts were not traditionally given. That's really kind of been created in the modern era because of its proximity to Christmas and, you know, wanting people to not feel left out, I'd say, more than anything. One of the interesting things about Hanukkah is that unlike most Jewish holidays, it is not in the Hebrew Bible because it post-dates the Hebrew Bible. So most of the Jewish holidays that are like much bigger deals, right? That people have heard of in terms of Rosh Hashanah, which is the New Year, Yom Kippur, which is the Day of Atonement, Passover, which is where, in fact, you should be talking about matzah, not in this context. Those are all in various places, either in the Hebrew Bible or come out of events that are chronicled in the Hebrew Bible. And Hanukkah is not. It postdates all of that. It's about this, rededication of the temple and a revolutionary figure in Jerusalem and this revolt that happened. And so it's also just not that religious of a holiday. And so, I know that a lot of people celebrate Christmas and it may not be particularly religious for them, but then there are a lot of people who, go to mass or do, sort of more religious things. There isn't you don't really go to synagogue on Hanukkah. There's no you don't fast. You don't do any of the things that are sort of more religious for other holidays. This is really kind of fun at home. Let's gamble and eat a lot of fried food, Yeah. So it's much lighter. It's not particularly religious. And so from that perspective, it's not really the equivalent of Christmas in terms of its stature in Judaism versus Christmas in Christianity. It's really just kind of like a fun festival and it's not the same.
So you talk
it's like a commemoration, or a remembrance. So it's like something super awesome that happened in history and that, people believe God had a hand in and is worthy of remembering and honoring with your family. Yeah,
exactly. So it's not 8 hours in synagogue, it's or any of the other sort of things that go along with a more religious holiday. It's really like let's hang out and eat fried food and play games.
I endorse that.
Yeah.
We need to Google the jelly donut thing for sure.
I would say also, as I was a religion major in college, and most of my classes were in Judaism, in women's studies. Women in Judaism was sort of my focus.
Shout out Smith College. Of course it's about women.
But it also felt like Hanukkah was a way for my Jewish professors and friends to involve people in the religion and to share something that was special with them, because it wasn't tied to your soul. It wasn't something that you had to be Jewish to really benefit from, Totally. It was a way that you could, invite people and share something that was special with them.
Yeah, tempt them in with the donuts.
Well,
that's what it sounds like. Oh, come here, I have a donut for you.
And I'd be like, right there.
Yeah, let's go. I'm in. Any religion with donuts, and it's right there. When I was in college, which was the same time as Anne was in college at the same college.
Did you know each other from school? Did you meet?
No. Isn't that sad? We were meant to be friends though, obviously.
Yeah.
Clearly.
So we were not allowed to have any candles in our housing, but they would let me light a menorah in the dining hall if I stayed there. So we used to light the menorah in the dining hall and then in the dining room, and then I would do something called Madonna Hanukkah. And we would just play Madonna music and dance around for the hour it took for the candles to go out. And it was so fun every year. And tons of people would come and hang out and dance, and just, especially because it's usually December and it would be around, finals time, and you needed that break. And so Madonna Hanukkah, it still lives on in my heart, but also anybody out there. And yes, it's a little bit alliterative and that was on purpose, but please, yes, please. And also now Madonna is sort of interested in Judaism and Kabbalah. So
it fits.
I don't know.
Well, hey, before we wrap this up, let's talk about what we're wearing. I want to hear what you're wearing because this is knitting related. Yeah. So what do you have there?
So this is from Louisa Harding's book, Shawls, Wraps, and Scarves, or maybe Scarves, Wraps, Shawls.
I know
something
it well.
like that. Yes. And this was including beads, which, by the way, were not as hard as I thought they were going to be, but are finicky. And I thought this was, very festive Christmas colors. So
yes,
I was getting into the, Christmas Vlogmas spirit.
So
what's the name of that particular pattern?
Is that the Larks Alvina?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we did that as a knit along at the beginning of this year.
Yeah.
Time has no meaning, so I don't remember when we actually did it. I think it was the beginning of this year.
A year. Yeah, it happened. Yeah. It was the beginning of this year. That's right.
Yeah.
And Shana, do you have a Ravelry page where people can see the details of your projects?
No.
Okay.
I am on Ravelry as Shana 414, but I really never put details in there. I have a book, an actual paper book.
Yeah.
Where I know it's.
Oh, I do too. Retro. My knitting journal. Yeah. Yeah.
But I have a book, and I put, all of my swatches, all of, the yarn info and all of that stuff. And so it is not on Ravelry. They're just going to have to come over and hang out.
Cool.
Sorry, guys. Come on down.
And you're wearing the Painted Bricks?
Yeah, this is the Painted Bricks Shawl designed by Stephen West. Yep. And I knit it in a yarn called Bobolinks yarn, which is from Vermont. It's a Vermont maker, and they sell yarns that are breed specific.
Oh.
So most of the colors come from them, and it's all Shetland. And then the others, like up here, there's like white, pink, and light blue that were leftovers from Jamieson and Smith, and then the black is Jamieson and Smith too. So it's all Shetland. It's just from 2 different companies.
Nice.
Well, that's what I'm wearing. What do you have, Jana?
This is the Color Affection. I knitted this a really long time ago. And it's just a stripy short row thing.
Nice.
Yeah. So,
and of course, purple.
Yeah. Purple and gray. Yeah. So it was a lot of fun. It was one of those
patterns.
It was one of those back and forthing things that's really good for TV, Sorry, Shana, say that again.
There are Hanukkah knitting patterns if people want to knit with, there are color work patterns where you can put in dreidels and all kinds of things. So if you just search for Hanukkah or dreidel on Ravelry, things come, or if Ravelry is not accessible to you, just Google it for, knitting patterns, and things are out there. So if you are, and you don't just have to do blue and white, you can go crazy.
Try spelling it different ways. You'll get different results.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
Right. Thanks again for joining us this year. It will have to be an annual thing. It's because we learn more. We learn different things each time we visit.
We covered different stuff this year. So that was really helpful.
Yeah.
I mean, it's my pleasure. I love sharing the joy of dreidels, trying to convince you that fried foods and gambling is the way to celebrate the holiday season.
Yay. Latkes and
Sufganiyot.
There you go.